Okay. Behave yourself.
Got to be a fine thing.
All starting off at 50p. Lady there, 50p. Well done. 50p. Lovely. Now, do I hear a pound? Yes, pound there. Gentleman there, a pound. How about a little gentleman there, £1.20. Lovely. Now then, £1.50. Thank you, sir. £1.50. Now then, is there any advance on £1.50? Oh, come on, you can do better than that, especially for our Dr. Fred. All I'm asking is £2. Who'll give me £2? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. I'd be happy to know that the grand total of this quarter's contributions to Dr. Shipman's patient fund is £761.38.
Thank you, Len. Thank you. Once again, Primrose and I express our grateful appreciation. Running a medical practice single-handed in this day and age sometimes seems like an uphill struggle. But the continuing loyalty of you, my patients, makes it all worthwhile. This money will go towards the purchase of an electrocardiograph machine. For the uninitiated, that's to help me detect any problems with your lot's dodgy tickers.
Surgery's not open till 4.
You'll not begrudge us a seat till then, will you?
Oh, it's you.
I do have an appointment, you know. It's my arm again, Doctor.
I ought to get a plaque for that seat. Ivy will cling. Go on, then. Best come in now before the rush is on. You ought to know what to do by now. All right, Ivy. Let's give you the once-over. I think I might try you on a new medication. Now then. Just make a fist, will you?
Thank you, Doctor.
the ECG machine's playing up. I'll see the others now. Come in, Julie.
I want the morning after pill, Doctor.
It's 4:30 in the afternoon.
You won't tell me, ma'am, will you?
The best prescription for you, Julie, is the word no.
Cheers, Doc. See ya.
This'll do you the world of good. It's what you need, so you shall have it. It'll cost my practice a small fortune. So don't go telling the other ladies it was me who prescribed it, will you?
Thank you, Doctor.
Could you step inside for a moment?
Shall I call for an ambulance?
It's a little late for that, don't you think? I've tried resuscitation. She's died on me.
Yes. Oh, I am sorry to hear that. No, you just leave all that to us. Had your mum been ill very long?
I can't understand it. She were full of beans on her last night.
I am sorry.
Perhaps it's for the best. She wouldn't have wanted to drag on in hospital, our mum.
I'm going to ask my dad about this.
Oh, sorry. You're still at it. Just checking, Alan. Can't be too careful.
It's one of Dr. Reynolds's. There's nothing wrong, is there?
Who knows? Stab wounds, bullet holes. One day I might find something suspicious. Then we'll be on the news, won't we?
Are you right to countersign the authority to cremate now, Doctor?
I certify that I know of no reasonable cause to suspect that the deceased died either a violent or unnatural death, or sudden death of which the cause is unknown.
And there's your £43 then, Doctor.
My ash cash.
But he's your doctor, Debbie. You've not had any problems with him, have you? What exactly are you saying, Debbie?
I just want to know from your experience, Dad, does that seem right for heart trouble? Well, thinking about it, since I came into the firm, I can only remember one of Fred Shipman's patients who died in bed in her nightie.
You didn't say anything to the family, did you?
What do you think I said? There's something untoward here. You ought to think about a post-mortem. Not daft, am I? Anyway, what do I know? We only bury them.
All right, love. I'll go and see Shipman.
No! Get away from me!
Oh, thank God, Doctor. Jim's upstairs. He's delirious. I think he has pneumonia.
I'll be the judge of that. Has he been taking his medication?
He's been trying to cut down.
Oh, has he? Is that your doing?
Oh, he doesn't need any more of that
Your
stuff.
husband's dying, woman. He needs pain relief.
Killing him. He needs antibiotics. He needs to go to hospital.
Let me do my job.
Help me!
Are you going to call an ambulance or am I?
On your head be it, Mrs. King.
Get away from me!
It is pneumonia. Has he been taking any medication, Mrs. King?
Diamorphine. My husband has terminal cancer. Jim was given 18 months to live about a year ago.
Have you noticed any side effects?
Shakes, depression, insomnia, vomiting.
Do you happen to know what dosage he's on?
Sure, he's on 560 mil.
What? A week?
A day.
Oh, my God. It's usually about 10.
Come in, Alan. What do you want? Do you want my books?
I don't quite know how to broach this. It's just that... Well, I've been in this business nearly 40 years, Doctor. Well, not to beat about the bush, I've been having concerns about the number of cremations we've been arranging for patients of the surgery.
I appreciate your concern, Alan. It's entirely professional. Here, this is my death certificate registry. Anyone can look at the book. Take as long as you like. I've nothing to hide.
He's what everybody says he is. A caring doctor who doesn't believe in sending his patients off to hospital to die. I was shaking like a leaf in there. The things I do for you. Oh.
It's not for us to go around asking such things of a doctor. I don't think he's going to sue us. The business is still safe.
All right, Dad. I'm sorry.
Best be getting back, Jim. Doctor's popping in to give us a flu jab before he shuts up shop for Christmas. There's an epidemic, apparently.
Deborah reckons we should find another practice, Dad. You know how she thinks about Shipman.
Well, I did have some doubts myself, but I raised the matter with him.
You did what?
I had word with the doctor about your treatment. I was worried about you.
You shouldn't have done that, Dad.
Hey, it's all right, lad. I'm convinced he thought he was doing his best for you.
Oh, thank you. Happy Christmas. Hello. Thank you so much. Happy Christmas.
And the compliments of the season to you and your family.
And to you and yours, Dr. Shipman.
Oh, while I'm here, Debbie, could you let me have a couple of 3 spare cremation forms? I'm right out.
You're not going to call us out over Christmas, are you?
Death never respects bank holidays, I'm afraid.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Reynolds. Didn't realise you were still on duty.
It's all right. I'm off home now.
Right, sir.
Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
My dad's dead.
What's this, glue vine? Glue vine? Oh, let's get stuck in. Stuck in?
There's no excuse for bad jokes, even on Christmas Eve.
Yes?
Well, quite nice.
Of course, Mr. King. Oh, I am sorry. We'll be right over. Of course. No rest for the wicked.
Christmas is always my busiest time. Old people die in the winter, I'm afraid. Fact of life. Even apparently healthy old folk like your poor old dad, Jim. What do you want me to put on the death certificate?
Oh, won't there be an autopsy?
Well, not in the United States now, Deborah. Fortunately. I saw him earlier today. He had very high blood pressure, actually. By the by, you're looking much better, Jim. I'll be in touch when your results come back. Hello, Debbie.
Happy New Year. It's another one of Dr. Fred's.
Yes, he does like to keep us busy.
You doctors from the Brook surgery should move in here.
These statistics suggest that his cremation rate must be higher than that of our entire practice. The 5 of us have over 10,000 patients, and we had 14 cremations and burials last year, whereas Shipman, a single practitioner with about 3,000 patients, has had 41 that we know of. And that's just the ones that doctors from this practice have been asked to sign the Part 2 cremation forms for. Recently, it's getting to be 1 every 10 days. Shipman issues the death certificates. There's no prior potentially fatal illnesses and no post-mortems.
Even Debbie from Massey's has noticed something's up.
Is she saying malpractice?
Well, no, but she's examining the bodies and found no obvious signs of neglect.
She's only an undertaker when all's said and done.
You must admit that these figures would be suspicious in a group practice like ours, yet alone a single-hander. How many times have any of you been present at a death in the home? In my 19 years of practice, I can only remember 2. No, 3.
Well, perhaps that's because none of us are in the habit of making unannounced house calls these days.
These figures are suggesting that Shipman may well be doing his patients deliberate harm.
Then perhaps you should contact the Medical Defence Union.
I already have.
You have? What do they say?
They say I should be very cautious as to what I allege about a fellow GP. But I'm going to call the coroner anyway.
I had a letter from that specialist you saw. You've won the lottery.
Oh, my God. Am I in remission?
It would seem you never had cancer in the first place. The hospital diagnosis was incorrect.
What?
I'm afraid these things sometimes happen. I believe I'm in the clear.
Had a good holiday, Stan?
First rate.
Oh, thanks, love.
Don't drink it all at once. Now, stick another couple of rashers on here.
There you go.
Lovely. Hey, up, Smithy. All the bad lads on strike in your division.
Jammy bastard, Edgerton. You picked the right time to go away well from the station.
You wouldn't begrudge me a couple of weeks off, would you?
The coroner tells me I can't talk to any of the relatives. Mustn't let the good doctor know we're looking into him. And, of course, have to protect the anonymity of the complainant. I know the doctor. I mustn't let her professional relationship be affected.
Has anybody else round here made a complaint?
Some undertaker's worried.
Alan Massey?
It's all rumour. It's like plaiting bloody sawdust. Either he's done something or he hasn't. But we'll never find out like this. Here, Shipman's not your quack, is he?
He's not as it happens, but I've never heard a bad word spoken against the man in Hyde.
My inquiries have been unable to substantiate any of your suspicions, whatever they might or might not be.
And you're sure of that, are you, Inspector?
We've thoroughly checked the causes of death on the certificates for all patients cremated in the last year against medical records. There appears to be no discrepancies.
And there's nothing more you can do?
He's a conscientious doctor. Can you honestly suggest any apparent motive for him to be negligent of his patients?
He doesn't know of your investigation, does he?
I can assure you of that, Dr. Reynolds.
I hope your chaps find out he's just a well-loved GP whose elderly patients have a habit of pegging out on him. We're not trying to cast aspersions on the good name of a highly educated man, honest. But our Debbie's really worried. Christ, I'm probably just getting paranoid in my old age.
You did the right thing, Alan. Entirely appropriate for a man in your position, expressing grave concerns.
That's all done. So a little... Oh, can you hear me, Mother?
Thank you, Dr. Shipman.
Oh, by the way, Mrs. Grundy, I'm involved in a study with Manchester University into the ageing process. I wonder if you'd consent to take part, seeing as you seem to show no signs of ageing at all.
Oh. What does it involve?
Oh, just a few routine tests. Blood samples, nothing very elaborate.
Of course.
Good. Oh, I'll need to get you to sign a consent form. Paul, Mrs. Hutchinson, would you two mind popping in here and witnessing a signature for me? You sure about this, Kathleen? Positive it's okay?
Yes.
Pop your name and addresses there, then just print it there and sign it at the bottom, would you? Good.
It's for the university. I'm surprised your doctor's not signed you up, May. You're even longer in the tooth than I am.
I suppose he must be fascinated why there's so many of us old uns still around.
He wants to take a blood sample tomorrow.
That's your day for the lunch club.
Oh, he's coming round to mine first thing, before surgery. He said it's no trouble. He's very thoughtful that way.
Just roll your sleeve up. Won't take a second.
Mrs. Grundy with you? No, she's not here yet. She would have bring veg. Not like her to be late.
Mrs. Grundy! Kathleen!
It's open round the back.
Call the doctor.
I'll take care of the death certificate.
Well, what are we supposed to do now, Doctor?
Oh, you might try ringing our solicitors, Hamilton's.
You don't have a Kathleen Grundy as a client, do you, Mr. Burgess?
Not that I'm aware of.
We've just had a call. I can't find her name on the records.
Hang on. Ah. Dear Sir, I enclose a copy of my will. I think it is clear in intent. I wish Dr. Shipman to benefit by having my estate, but if he dies or cannot accept it, then the estate goes to my daughter. I would like you to be the executor of the will. I intend to make an appointment to discuss this and my will in the near future. Did you make the appointment?
The caller said she'd just died. I told them she wasn't with us.
Is the daughter one of ours?
Mrs. Woodruff, my sympathies. Your mother's death was as much a shock to me as it obviously must be for you.
Thank you, Doctor. She thought the world of you.
Would you please step inside? I went to see her early on the day, did you know? When I popped in at 8 o'clock in the morning, she was still in her nightclothes.
Was she really? That's not like Mother.
You're happy with the cause?
What does this mean exactly? Old age?
Sometimes people of an advanced age, like your poor mother, Mrs. Woodruff, complain of feeling unwell, then they just die. No specific reason. I called the coroner's office to confirm that I could put old age on the certificate. I made the assumption that you wouldn't want the upset of a post-mortem, would you?
I'm early, love.
Kathleen Grundy's passed away.
Oh, no.
How are we going to take her to the station the weekend? She was looking forward to seeing her daughter.
Oh, no.
Kathleen was on Shipman's books and all.
I've told you, John, leave that alone.
I know something's going on.
You know nothing, John, and you'll say nothing or they'll have you up in court for slander. Either that or they'll think you mentally got some sort of grudge against him.
But it's all here.
Angela Woodruff?
Brian Burgess here from Hamilton Ward Solicitors in Hyde. I'm ringing about your mother.
She was buried a fortnight ago.
Yes, I'm sorry. I have a will here with me.
No, her will's here. I drew it up myself. She had no need of legal representation. I'm her solicitor.
Our office received Mrs. Grundy's will on the 24th of June.
That's the day my mother died. I can't believe she did this. Did you witness it?
I never saw your mother, Mrs. Woodruff. The will came through the post.
I think I'd better come back up to Hyde, Mr. Burgess. Excuse me, are you Paul Spencer? I got your address from Hamilton's.
No, he's not here anymore.
Then why have you got Paul tattooed on your neck? Paul, please. You're not in any trouble. I just need you to help me. Please.
It looks like mine, but it isn't.
Would you mind giving me a specimen of your signature? I can't believe this.
I thought it was just some medical form, routine-like. I never knew it was a will.
Why, would that have made a difference?
I don't suppose it would. I mean, if some chap comes up to you in a pub and asks you to sign a legal document, then you tell him where to stick it. But when it's the doctor you've had since you was a kiddie, you don't think twice, do you?
I can't believe she could have done this.
There was another woman who's witnessed it.
Yes, yes. She says it's not her signature either.
Fancy a day out the office, O'Brien? You free to drive me down to Leamington Spa?
What you got to inspect you? A murder?
Now, don't get all lathered up, O'Beak. There's only a report about a possible duff will.
All my estate, money and house to my doctor. My family are not in need and I want to reward him for all the care he has given to me and the people of Hyde. He is sensible enough to handle any problems that this may give him. My doctor is Dr. H.F. Shipman, 21 Market Street, Hyde, Cheshire.
You could do better with a bloody jumbo printing outfit.
Did you know my mother, Inspector?
Only by sight. I have voted for her, mind. I was in her ward when she was a councillor. Mrs. Grundy was very well respected in Hyde, Mrs. Woodruff.
This is my mother's will, Inspector. I drew it up for her myself. She would never have produced anything so shoddy. She'd been a professional secretary. That is her signature. And these are the two witnesses.
You've been to see them, have you?
I'm not trying to do your job for you, Inspector Edgerton, but this is a crude forgery. She never mentioned anything about making a new will in her diary.
All my estate, money, and my house to my doctor. Whoever made that will had no idea that Kathleen Grundy owned other property.
So what are you thinking, Stan?
We do know that Shipman was round at her place at 8 that morning to take a blood sample. She confirms that in her diary.
Doctors don't turn up at your home for a routine procedure in this day and age, do they?
You saying this doctor's at it?
I don't want anyone in the office to know about this yet, O.B. I'm going straight to the top with this one. We're dealing with a pillar of society here, so you just keep your gob shut. We're opening Pandora's box.
You know what you're asking, don't you? Have you ever done one? Well, neither have I. I don't know anyone in the division who has.
I've checked the procedure. All we've got to do is go and see the coroner. He'll okay it if we're investigating a serious criminal matter.
So who does the actual, you know...
Don't worry, boss. I found a specialist firm.
Have you really?
They were in the Yellow Pages, listed under exhumations.
So you're absolutely sure there's no other way forward? Very well. I want this handled as tastefully and tactfully as possible. And I don't want Shipman finding out what you're up to till it's over and done with.
We'll do the searches of his surgery and the house on the same day. I'll need 3 teams, boss.
Whatever you want. When do you propose?
2 o'clock Saturday morning. Saturday's the last day the press will get hold of it. Sunday would be even better, but I've no idea how long it'll take, and you can't go digging up a cemetery on a Sunday morning, can you?
I hope we're not just flying a kite here, Stan.
What the hell am I doing? Disturbing the remains of an ex-lady mayor. Suspecting a well-respected doctor who's doing her in for her money. If I'm wrong, it'll be my bloody funeral.
You know what you have to do, boss?
I've only got 5 months to go. If I bollocks my last big case, my whole career will be up in smoke.
Hey, they'll hang you out to dry.
This is about as much use as a chocolate bloody fire guard. Sorry. Like them grave robbers. Who was it?
Birkenhead.
Yes. Have they really? Well, tell them to mind their own blood. No, thank them for their concern and inform them that the police are aware. Would you credit it? Night staff at the old folks home called in to report black magic rites going on in the cemetery. Hope to God we've got the right grave.
This is all wrong, Stan. We put these good people into the ground. It's not our business to take them out.
I never thought I'd be doing one of these. God willing, I'll never have to do another.
Dr. Harold Frederick Shipman. I'm DS Hampson. We have a warrant to search your premises on suspicion of murder and obtaining monies by deception.
I suppose you know what you're doing.
Why all the secrecy, Stan?
It's an exhumation.
Oh, really? Buried how long?
About a month.
Cause of death?
That's what I need you to tell me. Badly.
Oh, well, who needs a lie-in of a Saturday, eh?
Would you mind showing us where you see your patients?
Very well. Come inside. I suppose you've no objection if I ring a solicitor?
That is your right, sir.
Mrs. Primrose Shipman, I'm Sergeant Jones. We have a warrant to search these premises on suspicion of murder and obtaining monies by deception.
I notice there's a typewriter mentioned in your warrant. I presume this is what you're looking for. Mrs. Grundy used to borrow it.
silly.
I'm sorry, Stan. I honestly can't tell you how she died.
So that's it, is it? The big zilch?
One thing's for certain, it was definitely not old age. She was a remarkable woman for 81. Her heart in fine condition, all her organs totally intact.
So the death certificate's still iffy?
She should not have been buried without a post-mortem. There's nothing more conclusive I can tell you, I'm afraid. It's all down to toxicology now.
Whose are these?
Mine.
To wipe your feet when you leave that house.
You'll never believe it, sir. He said he lent this to Mrs. Grundy.
Bloody hell. You know what he's telling us? That the will was typed on this. Get it to forensic.
Since word got out about the exhumation, we've been swamped with calls from relatives of Dr. Shipman's patients who have harboured misgivings, in some cases for years. Now, however experienced some of you may be on murder inquiries, this will be unlike any major incident you have ever worked on. This is not the usual case where a body is found and we have to match it to a suspect. We have a suspect. What we don't know yet is whether we have any bodies. And we certainly don't know how many. So, we have to keep an open mind. He may very well be an innocent man. And some of these people who called us are very angry. Some of them are depressed. All of them want us to find out what occurred in relation to their loved ones' deaths. And this we will endeavour to do at all costs.
So, what we're going to do is take all Shipman's deaths over the last year, going back to September 97. Who found the body? When did the doctor last visit? Did the families express any concern at the time? Was there a post-mortem? Was the body buried or cremated? Was there anything left in the will to Shipman or the surgeon?
Bloody disgraceful what you lot are doing. Hounding Fred Shipman. He's 1 in a million.
I come in here for a quiet game of dummies. I leave me duties at the door. Can we agree not to talk about it?
Best bloody doctor I've ever had.
Nothing less than a witch hunt.
I can't get a minute's peace in my old bloody club. And you should know better, Len, an ex-policeman.
I'm a friend of Fred's.
Inspector Edgerton?
Just standing here.
John Shaw.
Oh, aye, the taxi man.
I used to be a copper.
Not a bloody another one.
Ah, well, a long time since. I'm a friend of Kathleen Grundy. Was a friend of Kathleen Grundy.
There's something you want to tell me, John. Now then.
She wasn't the only one. I made a list. All my regulars. All ladies who died suddenly. All in good health. And all Shipman's patients.
How many names are on it?
A couple of dozen.
You what?
It goes back to 92.
Bloody hell. I shall want a full statement from you tomorrow.
I feel terrible, Stan. If I come to see you before, Kathleen might still be with us.
I tell you what, John. If you'd have come to me with this last month, I'd have thought you were a bloody crackpot. Dr. Shipman?
I'm Jess Walker, and I have a warrant to search...
Yes. Computers now, is it?
This is Detective Sergeant John Ashley from the GMP Computer Examination Unit.
I'm a master and 5 slaves, Sergeant.
Right. Then can we start with the master, Doctor?
Very well. This way. I hope you're not going to mess up my system. Took me a lot of time and effort to install this. I was one of the first practices in the Northwest to computerize, you know.
He knows what he's doing, Dr. Shipman.
What exactly are you doing?
Imaging your system onto an external SCSI drive. Part of our investigations.
I hope you're not expecting me to hang around. My tea will be on the table.
Will you let us get on with our jobs, please? All right, Ellis. Go and find a pizza place. Large pepperoni with extra anchovies. We might be here for some time.
The level of morphine in the liver was 4.8 milligrams per gram of tissue.
And that's enough to kill her?
That's enough to kill an elephant. Far higher than you'd expect to find in a regular heroin user, even one who'd taken an overdose. I'm assuming this subject is not an addict? Fortunately, there are further tests we can do on the hair to determine opiate naivety. To find out if we're dealing with a regular user, or whether this dose was a fatal one-off.
Excellent.
What about over-the-counter medicines? Like the diarrhea stuff?
Kaolin and morphine, very unlikely at these levels.
Yeah, is it in any way possible that the chemicals used in embalming, or any other post-mortem activity for that matter, might have affected your result?
Not according to the literature. But I must admit that I've not had much experience with exhumations.
Neither have I. I've got terrible
but
feelings.
You would be prepared to state on oath that an overdose was definitely the cause of death?
Well, there's no doubt about it. Whoever did this was evidently not banking on an exhumation. I take it this is a murder inquiry, Superintendent.
Definitely an overdose of opiates. I'm going to bring in the CPS. And I think it's time we had a talk to Shipman himself.
Thought you'd want to see this, boss.
Our man's previous.
His what?
22 years ago, sir. On his first posting in Todmorden.
Caught dipping his hand in his medical bag. Controlled substances. For his own use, apparently.
Shipman was a drug addict.
Halifax Magistrates Court, February 1976. Pleaded guilty to 3 charges of obtaining pethidine by deception, 3 more of unlawful possession, and 2 more charges of forging. Forging prescriptions.
He asked for 67 more offences to be taken into account. That's a lot of stuff for one junkie.
He must have been injecting himself, would you believe? 14 times a day.
They should have known about this. Why didn't we turn this up before?
With respect, sir, we're not in charge of the medical fraternity. I've always assumed if a doctor strayed from the straight and narrow, it was down to the General Medical Council to strike the bugger off. Not to let him set himself up again in another practice on his own.
Stan?
Dennis. Just popped in to gather my thoughts.
I know very well why you're here.
I'm not exactly the town's pet plod at the minute, am I?
If there's anything you want to get off your chest, that you can't discuss at work, that you don't want to take home, if you want to talk to me about the exhumation.
Exhumations.
What?
Looks like I'll be digging up behind till the day I retire.
I think you might be in need of some counselling.
No, I'd best be off home now.
Spirituous, not spiritual.
It's only circumstantial that points to forgery as yet, but now, supposedly, there's all these others crawling up out of the woodwork. Sorry, Vicar, unfortunate phrase.
You really believe you may have killed more than poor Mrs. Grundy?
You have to suspect your own suspicions. It comes with the turf. But the local GP is supposed to save lives.
We can't trust our doctor to act in our own best interest.
Then we've lost, haven't we? We might as well just shut up shop. There could be dozens, going back years.
No, how could you have kept them hidden for so long?
I'll tell you what, Dennis, if you've got designs on becoming a mass murderer, you couldn't get a better cover than general practitioner. Have I got to dig them all up? Have I got to cause grief to all them families all over again?
It's not just for the relatives, Stan. You have to do this for all of us. If he has betrayed the trust that we place in a family doctor...
If?
It's as bad as losing faith in the police.
Oh, why? And I've known a fair few duff vicars in me time and all.
Dr. Shipman, any comments on the exhumation of Kathleen Grundy? How did she die?
There are sick people waiting to see me.
Dr. Shipman!
Dr. Shipman, have you spoken to the police?
Do you intend to carry on practicing, Dr. Shipman?
Are you a murderer?
You can have 5 seconds of my time for photographs, but you must direct any questions to my lawyers.
And Ball? D.I. Edgerton, I understand you're acting for Harold Frederick Shipman on behalf of the Medical Defence Union. Yes, I'd like to arrange a meeting with your client at Ashton-under-Lyne Police Station next Monday. How does 9:30 suit? Yeah, I've arranged with the West Pennine Area Health Authority for a locum to conduct his surgery that day. Well, that's entirely up to you, of course, but I can assure you we'll be well within our rights to question your client at any time that's convenient to us. Not one that suits him, or you, for that matter. So, unless you'd welcome a call in the middle of the night, I suggest you bring him in on Monday. Thank you very much, Miss Ball. Good morning, Dr. Shipman. Miss Ball, would you like to step this way?
If you've got anything to say, Inspector, you can say it here. My client's got nothing to hide.
Very well, if that's what you want, we can do this in public. Dr. Harold Frederick Shipman, listen very carefully to what I'm going to say. I am arresting you on suspicion of murder, attempting to obtain property by deception, and 3 counts of forgery. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand what I've just said? Now, would you please step this way?
You're stupid, you are.
This is Detective Sergeant Walker and Detective Constable Denham.
This interview is being tape recorded and is being conducted in an interview room at Ashton Police Station. This interview may be the subject of remote monitoring. When the red light above the machine is illuminated, this means that the interview is being monitored by others assisting in the investigation. What is your name?
You know who I am.
This is for the benefit of the tape.
Harold Frederick Shipman.
Where do you live?
Row Cross Green, Mottram in Longdendale.
And who else lives there with you?
The wife. The cat.
We'll have this joker.
Mrs. Kathleen Grundy was a patient of yours.
She became a patient in 1992.
What were you treating her for?
IBS. Irritable bowel syndrome.
Was that why you went to see her on June the 24th?
I went to take a blood sample. She wasn't looking well. Nothing anyone else would have been aware of.
Was she expecting you that morning?
I saw her the previous day and told her I need a fresh blood sample and would call at 8 a.m. the next morning.
And you took a blood sample at that time?
I did.
How was Mrs. Grundy when you arrived?
She was in her dressing gown.
And was she still wearing that when you returned that afternoon?
She was fully dressed on the settee, obviously dead.
Did you carry out an examination of her at that time?
Yes. No obvious signs of death.
Why did you not consider a post-mortem?
I rang the coroner's office and described the circumstances and asked if I could put old age on the death certificate. The coroner's assistant said the doctor's recommendation would be sufficient.
Mrs. Grundy was taking part in an ageing survey. She mentioned it in her diary.
Yes. It was something being done in the practice.
You weren't expecting that.
Patients aged 75 and over.
She said you told her it was for Manchester University.
I've no recollection of intimating that.
Is there any record of her taking part in this ageing survey?
It was routine geriatric screening.
And you never considered a post-mortem?
I've already told you. People do die of old age.
But would you not be interested in the precise cause of death if you were doing a survey?
I'm inside him. What happened to the blood sample you took from Mrs. Grundy that morning?
When I returned to the surgery, I bagged it up for the pathology department. It went to Tameside General Hospital by courier service.
They can't remember ever receiving it.
It's definitely sent.
It definitely didn't arrive.
There could be any number of reasons. Lost in transit, incorrectly labelled.
That happens often, was it?
It has.
And it was normal to attend the patient's home to take blood, was it?
Yes. It was for me. I'm a good GP. A caring GP.
Would you be surprised to know that you were the sole beneficiary of Mrs. Grundy's estate?
Astonished?
The name of Hamilton's, the solicitors, was written in your handwriting on the back of Mrs. Grundy's medical records.
Then she must have told me they were her solicitors.
She'd never had any dealings with Hamilton's.
Nothing would surprise me.
Have you seen this will before?
No.
This will is a forgery. The signatures are all forged. Any comment, Dr. Shipman?
No.
This will was received at Hamilton's along with a letter, typed on the same machine. Your typewriter, Doctor.
I've no knowledge of it.
Mrs. Grundy was exhumed on 1st of August. Obviously, there were extensive tests. Toxicology. I'll quote what the forensic scientist said to us. That her death is consistent with the use or administration of a significant quantity of morphine or diamorphine. Do you have any comment to make about that?
Yeah. I think it's a moment here to go back to some of the entries in your GP notes.
Which? Well, do you want to look at them?
Right. We go back to the entry on the 12th of the 10th, 96, where I've commented, odd pupils, small. At her age, codeine, query. Meaning, I wonder if she's taking codeine tablets. Then, next July, pupils small, dry mouth, possible drug abuse. I'm sure you're well aware that drugs like morphine, heroin, pethidine, all cause small pupils. Then on the 26th of the 11th, I've commented, real difficulty as she denies everything. Not an intravenous user, as far as I was aware. I'm not sure. Clinically, nothing of note to confirm my suspicions. Wait and see. So, over that period of time, I wondered very seriously whether this lady was taking drugs other than which I'd prescribed.
Are you seriously suggesting that Mrs. Grundy, a well-respected lady who led a hard, decent life, inflicted a fatal overdose upon herself? Are you seriously suggesting that?
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just telling you of my fears and worries of this lady at that time. That I had my suspicions that she was actually abusing a narcotic of some sort for over a period of a year or so. I'm not suggesting that she took drugs every day. Far from it. But the scenario was, she may have given herself, accidentally, an overdose.
If you suspected she was taking drugs, then when she died, why didn't you order a post-mortem?
The scenario, Doctor, is that you tell Mrs. Grundy that you're involved in some aging survey in conjunction with Manchester University. This is what she told her family. That you go to her home address at 8 o'clock in the morning, you take a blood sample, which conveniently goes missing. And later, when the body's exhumed after an extremely sudden death, with no really supporting medical history to explain it, we discover that she's died from a fatal overdose of morphine, a drug to which she had no access.
You tell me that people in Hyde do not have access to drugs? I think you should talk to your drug squad.
Oh, why? What did she do then? Drive down to Moss Side to score some smack? An 81-year-old lady mayoress?
I strongly suggest to you that you injected Mrs. Grundy with a fatal dose of morphine which brought about her death.
No.
I put it to you that you forged the will.
No.
Is it not coincidence? Is it not significant that you would have been the sole beneficiary? Who else could have done it?
Anyone with a deranged mind could have done it.
Can I have a word with my solicitor?
He's gonna cough.
My client is ready to resume questioning.
Push him on that typewriter.
How did Mrs. Grundy know you had a typewriter?
It was in my cupboard. She may have seen it.
Why did she want to borrow it?
I don't know.
Did you loan it out to other patients?
She was the only one I loaned it to.
When did she return it?
I can't remember.
When the police came with a warrant to search your premises, how did you know that the typewriter was back in your surgery?
I'd used it on the day before, the Friday.
All the signatures on the will were forgeries. You suggested Mrs. Grundy forged her own signature.
My client has nothing further to say at this point.
We have no further questions at this stage. We may have at a later stage. You anything more to say, Doctor?
This interview is concluded at 18:15. Sorry, boss.
None of that.
Have we got enough?
You did great. Both of you. I'll leave him there while it sinks and he's not going home tonight. Mrs. Woodruff. Angela, it's Stan. I wanted to tell you personally. We're going to charge Shipman. No, not just the forgery.
These entries are ordered chronologically, right? So, this one, for instance, dated
12th of the 10th, 1996.
odd pupils, small, blah, blah, coding query. So he's suspecting she might have been taking opiates 18 months ago.
Right.
Wrong. This is when he actually created that record, 25th of the 6th, 98.
The day after she died.
Whatever date Shipman put on an entry, the internal clock in this program still registered an indelible record of the actual date it was really created. It's all stored in the ghost files. Cocky sod didn't know that, did he?
That's fantastic, John.
After he killed her with a massive dose of morphine, the bastard goes into his files and tries to make it look as though she was a drug addict. Shipman's created a false medical history for Kathleen Grundy to justify her destiny. Let's see if we can find what else is in here.
Dr. Shipman, I charge that you did attempt to obtain money by cruel deception by means of a forged will, and that...
I can't hear you.
OK, Doctor. Can we have some hush in here? And that you did, on the 24th of June 1998, in the county of Greater Manchester, murder Kathleen Grundy, contrary to common law. Do you understand?
I'm not guilty.
This way. In here. Okay.
Now, if you'd remove your belt, tie and shoelaces.
I can't take my laces out. I have an injury to my hand.
Allow me, Doctor.
So, we now have evidence to prove that Shipman continued to prescribe morphine to his cancer patients, even after some of them had died.
And that goes back at least until 1993.
And I thought the medical authorities had banned him from having addictive drugs.
But not from prescribing them.
According to unaccounted for discrepancies, he had enough to knock off a regiment.
Well, what kind of monitoring system is that? It's ripe for abuse.
Sir.
Yeah, what is it?
Document analysis has come in. I thought you'd like to know. There's a clear print of Shipman's on the will.
Any of Mrs. Grundy's?
No, sir.
Well, we'll have him for the forgery, at least.
Thank you, dear Sampson.
Yes, sir.
Why did he make such a cack-handed job of that will? It's almost as if he wanted to get caught. Was he taunting us?
Not that arrogant bastard. But he's not as bright as he'd have us believe. Can I have a quiet word, Len?
I've told you all I know, and I don't like what you're up to.
I never had you down as a drug addict, Len. Dr. Shipman was prescribing you diamorphine.
Of course not. Why the hell would he?
Were you aware that he was using you to stockpile his heroin?
Followed. The bastard.
So in the hidden files, we can see when his notes were actually created.
Hang on, John. Just treat us like wooden tops for the sake of argument, who know nothing about your magic tricks.
What exactly are you saying?
That after the deaths of these patients, Shipman would create a false medical history to justify whatever cause of death he entered on the certificates. He doctored the records.
That's why the first inquiry came to nothing. Of course, the records from the registrar matched the entries on the death certificates. Dave Smith was working with Duff Jen.
You can prove this, can you?
Take Winifred Mellor, for an instance. A surgery visit on the 16th of January 1998, apparently. Ill, very vague pain in the night. Woke, her still not wishing test or referral. If worse, TLUK.
What's that mean?
Well, to let us know. 10 days later, supposedly, he writes, chest pains and exercise, doesn't let it stop her, angina, refuses tests and referral. Both these entries were actually created the day after she died.
The day after he killed her?
The ghost records prove the pattern, even for people who were cremated.
This is amazing, John. We won't just have to rely on toxicology anymore.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Ashley. We really got something to put before a jury at last. Best send someone round to see Winifred Miller's daughter.
It's solid rock now, not shifting sand.
I understand you got a phone call from Dr. Shipman about 6:30 on the night Mrs. Miller died.
She were fighting fit, our mum. She did all the decorating herself, you know, a few weeks before. She were off on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land with the church. She was so excited. Trip of a lifetime.
What did the doctor say when he rang you?
He said that he was at my mother's, as she'd called him. She had been poorly with chest pains, but that she'd refused any medication. I said,
Are you sending her to hospital?
Well, there's no point.
You mean my mother's dead?
You understand.
Come in, Doctor.
I suppose you know your mother's been suffering from angina since last August. I wanted to send her to hospital for tests, but she dismissed her chest pains as indigestion and refused.
It's just so dismissive. Abrupt. I was shocked because my mother had been a long-term patient at Shipman. She'd always spoken so highly of him. Dr. Fred, she called him. It was as though he'd never had that sort of relationship with her.
I'll record coronary thrombosis as the cause of death. I'm sure you'll be pleased to know there's no need to go through the distress of a post-mortem, as I've seen her recently.
Yes, Doctor, Mrs. Ellis next door said she saw your car around here this afternoon.
She said what? She saw nothing of the kind. I'll make out the death certificate in the morning. You can come to the surgery to pick it up.
My mother had picked up a pension that day. She'd only been and done a bit of shopping on the market. Her purse was on the mantelpiece. Should have been about £50 left. It was empty.
Father Mayer confirms that he heard Shipman say that Mrs. Miller had rung the surgery about 5:30.
Did you check her itemised phone bill?
No calls made to Shipman's surgery from Mrs. Miller's phone any time on the day of her death.
So he just turned up on a doorstep unannounced and charmed his way in. Like the Grim Reaper.
Question 17. Who was President of the United States at the time of the American Civil War? Question 18. Spell anaesthetic.
Oh, that's not fair. He's a studying doctor.
UK or American spelling?
I thought I'd seen a lot, but I've never come across anything like him. I must have passed him in the street hundreds of times. He just seemed like everybody else, but he's different from the rest of us. He must be.
You're sure it's not just greed, pure and simple?
That will was a one-off, as far as we know. All right, there might have been a few bits and bobs of tatty jewellery, a few quid here and there, but that's not what this is about. Can a man be born evil?
Then he wouldn't be responsible for his actions, would he? No, I have to believe that he was created good.
So he chose to be a mass murderer, same as you chose to be a vicar?
Closeted child, overachiever from an early age. His mother gets cancer when he's a teenager, and he watches the doctor come and give her injections of morphine to ease the pain. Who knows what that does to a young, impressionable mind? She dies in agony when he's 17, and he spends the whole night running alone in the rain.
With all due respect, bollocks. There's thousands of kids go through much worse than what he ever did. Granted, some of them turn out bad or mad. I come across that type every day, but they don't end up like that warped bastard, do they?
Is there a sexual dimension to the crimes?
I could understand that. I'd hate it. It disgusts me, but at least I'd know what kind of monster we were dealing with.
Why did he kill old ladies?
He killed whoever he could get away with killing. And the most vulnerable of his patients happened to be mostly old ladies living alone. Who knows, if he'd worked in the inner city, he'd probably been knocking off junkies. You've been around the dying, Dennis.
That does come with the turf, I'm afraid. You'll never get used to it.
What kind of person could get pleasure out of watching people die? Of being there when they take their last breath?
Sometimes it can be a blessing, when the suffering's all over. Could he have believed that somehow he was easing their pain?
Absolutely not. There's no element of mercy here, Dennis. I wish there was. Not that I'd ever condone it.
I'm sorry, Stan, I'm not being much use, am I?
You're a great help, Dennis. It's just a bloody mystery. Did he get some sick gratification from having that power? Choosing whether he took a life or saved it, playing God?
I've always objected to that phrase. God does a lot more than decide when people have to die, you know.
Oh, why? Some might say he's turned his back on Hyde of late. Didn't do much to stop Shipman killing, did he?
Neither did the medical authorities, for that matter.
Yeah, neither did we, before you say it.
You couldn't be doing more than you're doing now, Stan. God knows that.
I think that's what I see when I look in those eyes. I think the doctor reckons he is the supreme being, that he has the ultimate power over life and death.
Interview with Harold Frederick Shipman, 5th of October 1998, 11 a.m. Detective Sergeant Waring and Detective Constable Maurice Natinsky and Solicitor Anne Ball in the room.
Dr. Shipman, could you tell us about your computer program?
It's called a DOS program, MicroDoctor. It was put in place about 5 years ago, after the opening of the surgery. I was trained by them to use it.
Do you consider yourself competent at these procedures?
I would say I was fairly computer literate, yes.
How do you access the computer?
You switch it on.
Do you have a password to enter the machine?
I can't believe you're asking me a question that is so self-evident.
Do other members of staff have passwords?
Everyone, except the cleaner. I'm sorry I'm smiling. You have no concept of general practice.
When do you update your medical records after a home visit?
Usually on the same day, occasionally on the following day. Depends how busy the practice is.
Do you enter those records onto the computer yourself?
I enter them directly. I do it personally. That is my role as a GP.
I'd like to clear up the procedure of issuing death certificates.
This was covered at a previous meeting. Unless there's a new question, I'm not going over old ground.
Exhibit AJB22.
Do you accept that these are the medical records of Winifred Mellor?
The records you placed in front of me are those of Mrs. Mellor.
Did she attend the surgery on the date stated therein?
Yes.
When did you record these notes?
As soon as possible after seeing her.
What contact did you have with Mrs. Mellor on the day of her death, Monday, May the 11th, 1998?
She came to the practice. I examined her. She was complaining of chest pains. But at that time, she was not wanting to be treated or have any investigations.
And when did you see her again?
I then saw her at 6:15 p.m. when she was dead.
What was your diagnosis as to the cause of death?
Angina. No rigor mortis had set in. She couldn't have been dead long.
Did you visit Mrs. Mellor at home that afternoon?
No.
A witness, Mrs. Gloria Ellis, a neighbour of Mrs. Mellor, saw a red car arriving at 3 p.m. Was that you at Renault?
I suppose I could have been visiting other patients on the road.
Why did you go back that evening?
I'd gone back because I was sufficiently concerned about her.
Mrs. Mellor's daughter, Kathleen Adansky, has stated that about 6:15 she received a call from you. You told her that her mother had suffered from angina from August 97 and she'd refused all forms of treatment.
Yes.
Mrs. Mellor's sleeve was rolled up.
I didn't see it.
Would you roll up a sleeve in the normal course of a consultation?
No.
Your death certificate recorded coronary thrombosis. Can you indicate to me how severe the angina was at all?
The severity of angina doesn't indicate the likelihood of a coronary. I'm sure your medical experts would agree. We have a history of angina that's of increasing severity. We have a relatively sudden death, or sudden in the sense that the patient hasn't made the effort to dial 999. How many nines is it? 3 nines, sorry. Hasn't struggled round to the neighbours, and that's often the story with elderly patients. Coronaries come fairly rapidly.
A Home Office pathologist, Dr. Rutherford, carried out a post-mortem examination.
If you say so.
His findings do not support that this lady died of a coronary thrombosis as you've diagnosed. Would you like to comment on that finding?
Doctors don't always diagnose a heart attack as a heart attack. They'll call it a coronary thrombosis, or myocardial myocardial infarction. To the average run-of-the-mill GP, they're all the same. The patient's dead.
Well, in his expert opinion, there was nothing to support your diagnosis, is what I'm saying.
With a coronary thrombosis, you would expect there would be a bit of heart muscle damaged. But you can't just have an electrical disorganization of the heart, which kills you just as effectively and leaves no symptoms at all. No signs, sorry. No signs at all.
Forensic examination of the samples taken, including muscle tissue at that post-mortem, have been examined. These are the samples taken from Mrs. Mellor, and there's certainly a high level of morphine still contained in her body, a fatal level, to be precise. Can you account for that?
No.
Well, I've got to put it to you, Doctor, that you were the person who administered that lady with a drug, aren't you?
No.
The levels were such that this woman actually died from toxicity of morphine, not as you wrongly diagnosed. In plain speaking, you murdered her.
No.
One feature of these statements from the family was that they couldn't believe their own mother had chest pains, angina, and hadn't been informed.
By whom?
By her.
By her? Thank you.
They also found it hard to believe that she would refuse any treatment she was given in relation to this diagnosis, and I think that now we can answer why that was. Because she didn't have a history of chest complaints and heart disease and angina, did she, Doctor?
If it's written on the records, then she had the history.
Right, now the computer.
We've got a statement from Detective Sergeant John Ashley, who works in the field of computers.
Thank you.
He has made a thorough examination of your computer, Doctor, and the medical records contained on it. Because this man's an expert, he's able to interrogate computers, and he's gone into this computer in some depth. And what he's found is that there are a number of entries that have been incorrectly placed on this record to falsely mislead and to indicate that this woman had a history of chest pains and angina. What have you got to say about that, Doctor? Nothing?
Can I have a look at them?
You attended that house at 3 o'clock, and that's when you murdered this lady. And so much was you a rush to get back to the surgery and immediately start altering this lady's medical records. And we can prove that only minutes after 3 o'clock on that date, you are fabricating that false medical history for this woman. Can you tell me why you needed to do that?
There's no answer.
Well, there is. There's a very clear answer, because you've been up to her house, rolled her sleeve up, administered morphine, killed her, and you were covering up what you were doing. That's what happened, isn't it, Doctor?
Exhibit JFA42.
I am now showing you. And I'll put this in the middle of the room because your solicitor could examine it as well then. It's an insertion. Behind your computer there's a ghost image, and it records what's placed in and what's removed. Can you see that entry, Doctor? It reads, chest pains, all appears okay, question mark, angina. When was that dated?
August the 1st, 1997.
No. Can you see the record of the computer ghost? It confirms that you inserted that entry less than 4 minutes after you were seen leaving Mrs. Miller's house on May the 11th, 1998.
Can I just have a look at that?
Have no recollection of putting that on the machine.
You choose not to remember it. It wasn't too long ago in this interview where you were explaining that you'd been to see the family, checked the computer record and told them about this angina, was it?
It's a rhetorical question.
It's quite correct, though, isn't it?
I'm well aware that that's how an audit trail works. There's no argument with that. I still have no recollection of entering that onto the machine.
No.
Go and get the superintendent.
Somebody sneaked into your surgery and updated these false records. The simple truth is, you fabricated a history to cover what you've done. You murdered her, and you make up a history of angina and chest pain so you could issue a death certificate and placate this poor woman's family, didn't you?
No.
It doesn't stop there.
You'll find that the clock is out by an hour because we don't change it for summertime.
I don't think we should bother about clock timings.
Well, you're making a great point about me being there.
I'm making a great point about somebody falsifying a person's records on the date of her death to fabricate a medical history for them.
I've got him.
Can we have a consultation at this stage, please?
Certainly.
The time now by my watch is 17:12 hours. I'll switch off the tape.
Outstanding. Well done, Mark. I knew you could do it, Marie.
Excellent. Just a matter of time now.
He's completely lost it. He's not going to talk, is he? He's not going to give us the satisfaction. We're never going to know how many more he did. The arrogant bastard. There's not a remorseful bone in his body. He's not sorry for his victims, he's crying for himself.
My client's not fit for further interview.
I think we should be the judge of that.
It's my considered opinion that my client is having a nervous breakdown.
Very well. We shall call for a police surgeon.
Harold Frederick Shipman stand up? You have finally been brought to justice by the verdict of this jury. I have no doubt whatsoever that these are true verdicts. The time has now come for me to pass sentence on you for these wicked, wicked crimes. Each of your victims was your patient. You murdered each and every one of them by the calculated and cold-blooded perversion of your medical skills for your own evil and wicked purposes. You took advantage of and abused their trust. You were, after all, each victim's doctor. I have little doubt that each of your victims smiled and thanked you as she submitted to your fearful ministrations. None realized that yours was not a healing touch. None knew that, in truth, you had brought her death disguised as the caring attention of a good doctor.
One of forgery, the jury foreman replied, guilty 16 times. There were gasps and tears from the public gallery as the verdict sank in. Mr. Justice Forbes told Shipman that he had murdered his patient for his own...
The sheer wickedness of what you have done defies description. It is shocking and beyond belief. You have not shown the slightest remorse or contrition for your evil deeds, and you have subjected the family and friends of your victims to having to relive the tragedy and grief you visited upon them. On each of the 15 counts for which I pass sentence upon you, the sentence is prescribed by law. Justice demands that for each and every count of murder, I pass the sentence of life imprisonment.
Verdict's in, love.
Guilty.
I've come to the firm conclusion that the crimes of which you stand convicted are so heinous that in your case life should mean life.
Yes!
My recommendation will be that you spend the rest of your days in prison. Take him down.
Live to Hyde, where our reporters with Mark Lupton, who's the deputy editor of the local newspaper.
Thank you, Mark. It's rush hour in Hyde. People going home to digest the news of the verdicts on Dr. Harold Shipman. His surgery is just a short walk down the hill from here. The surgery looks much like it did when the investigations began. The notice board giving the times of the surgeries is still there, but where there used to be the name Dr. H.F. Shipman, there's now a white strip of tape.
Well, as we heard there from the Crown Prosecution Service, the police might charge Harold Shipman with even more murders. The final death toll could even run into hundreds. But what about the relatives of those who died?
Such was the heinous nature of his crimes that he should spend the rest of his life behind bars. Life should mean life, the judge said. 54-year-old Shipman showed no emotion.
Let's put in a bulk order. I don't reckon this is over.